Probably one of the biggest challenges you're going to have in creating embroidery files with Inkscape and InkStitch is routing or pathing, because it is a bit of a complicated process here with InkStitch. So this is a design that we did earlier. So I will put a link in the description below so you could see what it took to get up to this point here. But now what we need to do is we need this guy to stitch in a very logical order. So what I've done here is I'm going to open up my man logo layer, and what I've done here is I've created all these pieces. I've named them. So we have the head piece here, and I tell you what, let's come in here and let's delete all of this because I've already done that, but let's delete that. Okay, so we have our headpiece, and then we're putting everything in the order that we want it to stitch. So then we have our left bow, we have our right bow, we have the center portion of our bow, then we have our upper button, lower button, and then I decided we're going to jump from our lower button over here to our arm, and you're going to see why here. But then we're going to do our left chest, we're going to do our right hand. So we're going to go from this left chest way down here to our right hand, then our right arm, then our right chest, and then we're going to go to our coattails, and then we're going to go to our pants, and then we're going to go to our towel, and then we're going to finish up on the left hand. So let's first of all look at that in simulation mode and see where maybe some of our issues are. Now what we're going to do here, it looks fine right now, right? But what we're going to do here is turn on our frogs, and now you can see we have quite a mess going here. So if I click on my info panel here, you can see we have 9, a family of 9. Well, for such a simple design, we certainly don't want 9 frogs involved. Okay, and you can see here that we've got these lines kind of going every which direction. Now, on my machine, this is not a huge concern because I'm working with a 6-needle machine that does automatic thread trimming. But if you're working on a machine that does not have an automatic thread trimmer, then having these jump stitches go crisscrossing back and forth all over the place would be a disaster. So we definitely don't want that. So we've got to take some control of that. But even beyond that, if I was stitching just one of these and we had all these thread jumps, see, my machine would look at these thread jumps and it would do a thread trim at all those positions, right? So, but we wouldn't necessarily want that because that is not very production friendly. In order to do a thread trim, the machine has to slow down, trim the thread, and then start back up again. And every time that machine starts and stops, we could have issues with it grabbing the bobbin. There's all kinds of issues that might stop this machine from continuing on with the design. So as a general rule, when we're doing our design work, we do not want to have this mess. But this is one issue where people really, really struggle with to know how to fix it, for one thing. And so that's what we're going to walk you through. Okay, so just generically speaking, we're going to start here with our head. And then, like I said, we're going to go over to our left bow. And then we're going to do our right bow, but then we're going to do the center. Okay, so we need this to stitch in a particular order. So let's go ahead and look. Let's just come in here and look at simulator mode again and see what's happening here. So let's pause, and we're going to just kind of go through this. So it's going to stitch our head. I guess I had my head selected, or I had the center bow selected. So let's just, for right now, let's just select that much of it. And we'll just take a look at how it's going to stitch these first few pieces. So it's going to stitch out my head. It is stitching from the top down, so that part's good. And then it's going to, let's turn on our thread jumps here. And then it's going to jump from our head to the bottom of our left bow. That's our first problem area. We don't want that to jump like that. but let's go ahead and keep going. And then it's going to jump to the bottom of our right bow. So that's our next problem. We don't really want it to do that. And then it's going to stitch out our center piece, and then it's going to jump down to there and jump down to there. So from our center of our bow down to this piece, down to this piece, that's okay. But this thread jump is not, okay? Nor is the next one, where it's jumping from the end of this all the way down to here. We don't want that to do that, okay? And the reason that you don't want those thread jumps is because just like with the thread trim, the machine has to slow down and zip and jump to the next spot. So we want to make this as production friendly as we can. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a function in the software where we're going to select this piece here and this piece here and this piece here, and we're going to use a function in the software called extensions, InkStitch, and tool stroke, and we're going to do jump stitch to stroke. So when we see that we've got jump stitches in areas we don't want them, this is how we're going to take care of it. So let's go ahead, take a look at those settings that I typically will use right there. And let's go ahead and hit apply. And we'll see what the software will do for us. Let's go ahead and close that out. So it's created a couple of lines for us. So first of all, let's go ahead and change the thickness. I wish there was a way to do this, but for some reason it doesn't seem like there is a way to do this. So, and I don't exactly know why that is, but we'll go into fill and stroke here. For stroke style, it always reverts to 1 millimeter, but I want to have it 0.2 is what I usually use. All right, so this is the jump stitch that's going from here to here, okay? So we're going to take a look at this a little bit more closely here. So let's do like that, and we're just double clicking to create a node. So you can see it's going to finish up here and walk over here down to here. Now instead of just jumping from there to there, we're going to change the route of this. So it's going to go from here to there, something like that, okay? Something about like that. And we can even probably change the connection there, okay? So now if we take a look at that, we'll go ahead and select those elements again, and we'll go back into simulator. We'll go ahead and throw on our frogs here. You see there's no frogs. And there you go. That's what you want to see. You don't want to see no frogs. So there's no frogs at that first part. All right. Things are looking good. So now the next thing that we're going to do is, remember, we finished our lower button. So let's go back to our layers palette here. And now what we're saying is we want to finish our lower button, and we want to go over to our right arm. Okay. And more specifically, we want it to come right down to this tip. So let's look at the params of our right arm and make sure that it is stitching from the bottom up. That will be our first challenge. And you can see our arm is stitching from the top down. So that's problematic. We need, and just kind of look at where the arm is here. So we need choose swap rails. And you can see now we are stitching from the bottom up. Okay, so that's good. So now what we need to do is take our lower button, and we just need to take our arm. So I'm holding my shift key, and let's go ahead and do that same function that we did previously. Now I do have a keyboard shortcut of Control-Alt-J to create that, to bring up that dialog box and go ahead and create that jump. Okay, and then likewise, we can come back in here to our fill and stroke. Remember, we do 0.2. So now all we have to do is reroute this. So we're going to do that there. And all we're doing is just adding a couple of nodes to reroute this. So it's going to go from the bottom of our button here going to come across, and now it's going to start there, and then it's going to end up here, and then this one is going to start right there. Well, we want it to start right there. We don't know if it's actually going to start right there unless we go into params and see if it in fact is going to start right there. So it does appear that it's not starting right there. Maybe it's ending there, but I don't think it's starting there. It's starting somewhere here in the middle. So that is not ideal. Okay. So now we'll do that same thing where we're going to select those two parts, and let's go into extensions, InkStitch, stroke, jump to stroke. Now normally I would not do this bit by bit like this. I'm just doing it for just to kind of drill the point home. So let's just switch over to wireframe. And okay, so now it did not create a jump stitch between these two. Now I'm not exactly sure why. Let me just double check. So I'm not exactly sure why it didn't, but let's go into simulator mode with those two selected and see how this is actually going to stitch out. I thought we needed a connector there, but perhaps not. So we'll just kind of go through this slowly. You can see it's going to come up to the top here, and now I'm going to use the plus key on my keyboard to advance stitch by stitch. So we're going from there down to there. Let's turn on our frogs. And so what's happening here is that distance is not big enough to be considered a jump stitch. So that's why it did not create a jump stitch there. But you can see there is a little bit of a jump there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a start command to our fill here. And we are going to also add an end command also, because I want it to end right down here. Because remember, we're going to go from our left chest to our right hand over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this object here, and we're going to come up here to our extensions, InkStitch, commands, and right here, attach commands to selected objects. And we're going to attach the start and end position of our fill stitch. So we'll go ahead and close this out. We get these little icons. So we're going to start right at the top, because remember we're ending right there. And then for the end command, we're going to move it over here and down. Okay. Now I don't like to see those command markers. So we'll just come over here, and you can see here we could just toggle the view of those command markers off. Okay. And just so you know, you could do it through InkStitch. You come in, if you had those selected, you could come in here to Extensions, InkStitch, and when we come into Commands and View, you see where we have a display or hide toggle. So if I click on that, it will turn our commands back on. Okay, so you see now the commands are back on. So now I'm going to go back in here and just turn them back off. And if we don't have anything selected, it's going to search the whole document. You can see, so those commands still exist, but they've just been turned off temporarily. Okay. So now we know we're going from our left chest to our right hand. Okay. So we can go ahead and select both of those objects, and then Control-Alt-J is my keyboard shortcut. That will create us a stroke between those two objects. Now, we will have to go into wireframe mode to see it, but there is that stroke right there. It's just a straight line. So that does work. That's okay. So the only thing I might do here a little bit differently is the width of those. I like to be 0.2 of a millimeter. Not a big deal. But now that's going to stitch out. and then this is going to stitch, then this is going to stitch. But we need this to figure out exactly how this is going to stitch compared to this. So this piece here, I think what we want to do is I think really we want this to stitch maybe from the bottom up or the top down. I think from the bottom up, and then we'll connect these two right here. I think that's what we'll do. So let's look at the params for that piece. It's stitching from the top down. Okay. So we want it to switch the opposite way. We want it to stitch from the bottom up. We'll choose apply and quit. Now the problem is that this piece here needs to now connect down here. Not a big deal. Something like that. And you know what? It doesn't even need to do that. We can do a straight line. So we definitely do not need to, that could just be a straight line. So it's going to go from here to here now. And then this, we need to start right there. So I don't know where it starts, so we got to look at the params of that. So we'll open up params for our arm. And you can see it's stitching from the top down. So first step, we need to swap the rails. We need it to stitch from the bottom up, but we also need it to start right there at the top, and it does. So there we go. We can choose apply and quit. So it's going to jump right there, okay? And then it's going to end up here. So we want to add start and end commands to this piece. So it is starting and ending where we need it to. So we're going to go into extensions, InkStitch commands, attach commands, start and end points. Very good. Now we can't see our markers, so we will move over. There is our start marker here. What's going on here? Let's go in here and take a look at what's happening here. So this piece here, there's our end command for that. I'm just going to delete those because I'm not sure what happened there. So it didn't want to let me move those for some reason. So let's try that again. So we are going to do start and end commands. There we go. Now I can move them freely. I don't know. That was kind of weird. But we're going to have it end right down here. Okay. So that's good. So we will just manually turn those two off now because I don't need those anymore. But I do need to see, this is the next piece that stitches, and I do need to see that it's stitching from the bottom up. So let's make sure that that is what's happening. Sorry, wrong thing. So we need to go into params. There we go. So is that stitching from the bottom up? Indeed it is. So that's okay. But now what we need is we need a little running stitch between these two. So little jump stitch action here. Jump to stroke. Okay, and there is our stroke. So let's go ahead and make that 0.2 thickness on our line. Grabbed the wrong one apparently. There we go. Right here. So we're going to finish our coat right there, and we're going to start down there. And so this one here, we do need to add start and end commands to it as well. So we'll come in here to InkStitch commands, attach commands, and we're going to do start and stop there. So our start is going to happen right over here because that's where that piece ends. And then for our trousers, we're going to zoom in here a little bit. We need this to end right at that corner, basically, because then it's going to jump over to our towel. Okay, so we'll go ahead and turn those off. Okay, and then we need to add start and end commands to this as well. So we'll come in here and do that. Commands, attach commands. We'll do a start and stop there. Okay, so we need to start our towel where the trousers end, and then we're going to end our towel where our hand begins. Right there. Now we don't need a jump stitch between these two because they're so tiny. Okay, so we will go ahead and just turn off the visibility of those. And now this is all set to stitch out exactly how we want, I think. So let's go into Simulator and let's just take a look at it real quick. All right, so our head, and then it's going to come down our left bow, our right bow, our center bow, our button, our button, our button, little jump stitch over to our left arm. And then you can see here it's going to do a little run stitch down to our left coat and then over to our right arm here, right hand, and then it's going to go ahead and stitch our jacket, come down to do our tail, and there goes the trousers. You can see the trousers end right there. Going to go into our towel, and our towel is ending right where our hand begins. So if I go and look at my thread jumps here, you can see that I don't have any thread jumps. And if I go into my info panel here, of course you can see that we've got nothing. So everything stitches in order. And then if we want to at the end, we can go back in and that'll be visible, that'll be visible, that'll be visible, that'll be visible. Technically that little guy will be too, and a little one right there. Okay, but the key takeaway here is we can go in and trim all those at the end, but there's no way around that because this has a space between, this has a space, this has a space, this button is, it's like an island. That's an island. This is an island. So we have to have a little thread jump there. Okay, so that's unavoidable. But this will be a nice production-friendly design that we can now stitch. But you can see we have to visualize that as the digitizer. We have to visualize that in our head before we can use the tools in InkStitch to get us there. So this part of the process can be kind of time consuming, not only to do, but also to learn exactly how to, and I'm not good at it. I'll be the first one to admit it. But I can hack my way through it. But that's definitely an area where I could definitely use some improvement on. So I hope that helps you out in controlling those thread trims a little bit and then kind of getting a feel for how to control this. And the more of these project videos you watch where we do routing and pathing, we do have another one. It's the Landrum logo, so I'll put a link to it in this video description so you can maybe take a look at that. That's probably a little bit more advanced than this one even. but the more of those project videos you watch on routing and pathing, the more it'll kind of click for you in the end. So thanks for watching.